and I'm getting mighty tired of your trifling ways and of listening to that jackass Bray.
Most motions don't change a case. This one might, because if the judge grants it, the jury won't just hear about that one night. They'll hear about an entire relationship. Remember her, Courtney Clenney, aka Courtney Taylor? You know, the model from Miami accused of killing her boyfriend, Christian Obumseli, in April of 2022 by throwing a knife across the room, fatally hitting him in the chest, arrested and charged with second-degree murder 4 months later in Hawaii? Her defense team recently filed a motion. Now, every case has a moment where its strategy pivots. For Courtney Clenney, that moment may be this motion. Courtney Clenney, by and through undersigned counsel, respectfully moves this court for an order permitting the introduction of evidence of specific instances of conduct committed by Christian Obumseli in support of Courtney's claims of self-defense and battered spouse syndrome. Now, if the judge agrees, this case would stop being about a fatal stabbing and start being about years of alleged abuse, fear, and the state of mind of a battered woman. Battered woman syndrome. Keep that in the back of your mind. This filing lists Clenney's versions of events that describe a situation of self-defense. She claims to have thrown the knife at Obumseli in fear, as he had been aggressive and violent, pitting her against the wall, restraining her with both of his hands around her neck as she had fallen to the floor. She told detectives this was not the first or second time he had done this, and she was simply afraid of him. The filings indicate that Obumseli was violent, controlling, manipulative, and intimidating. The defense seeks to show text messages, medical records revealing back injuries, rib injuries, finger lacerations, and eyewitness testimony to support her claims, including police presence at their home the day before the incident, when Clenney told officers she had just ended their relationship and wanted him out of the apartment they shared. Between the prosecutor and the defense, no one disputes that the relationship between Christian Obumseli and Clenney was toxic. Both sides actually agree the relationship was unhealthy, and there is a trail of violent encounters that follow them as a couple. It was reported that Clenney had been arrested for domestic battery on Obumseli in 2021 in Las Vegas. Where the two sides disagree is who the aggressor was. The state asserts that Clenney was the aggressor, and her version of events is inconsistent with what the medical examiner found. The defense asserts Obumseli was the aggressor, and Clenney, who had been seeking treatment for PTSD in the time leading up to her arrest, was merely a very afraid, battered woman. Battered woman syndrome. It describes a pattern of psychological responses that develop in people subjected to repeated domestic abuse. And basically, it's supposed to explain why someone who has endured years of violence might act in ways that look irrational to people who have never lived through it. Battered woman syndrome is not a standalone psychiatric diagnosis, though. You won't find it in the DSM-5. Mental health professionals generally treat it as a subcategory of PTSD, where the traumatic stressor is ongoing intimate partner violence. Now, it is at this point I would be remiss to talk about battered woman syndrome without talking about the case that brought this defense to the forefront of society's conscience. Francine Hughes. You may or may not be familiar with her, but you may be familiar with her story, which was made into not only a nonfiction book, but a TV movie called The Burning Bed.
Francine, in all my research, I haven't found a single precedent that would support a plea of self-defense. So this is what I recommend. We forget self-defense, and we change the plea to not guilty by reason of temporary insanity.
You mean crazy?
No, I mean that if I can get expert testimony as to your state of mind at the time of the murder, we may have a chance. Now, you'll have to see a number of psychiatrists. Are you willing to?
Francine Hughes had married her husband at the age of 16. He was 18. Over the course of the decade-long marriage they shared, Hughes had endured severe mental, emotional, and physical abuse in front of the 4 children they shared. And after forcing himself on her one night, she had had enough. Once her husband had fallen asleep, Francine poured gasoline all around his bed and lit it on fire, killing him and destroying their house of horrors completely. Hughes was arrested and went to trial. She was found not guilty by reason of temporary insanity, using battered woman syndrome as her defense. Barbara Sheehan. Barbara Sheehan was a working wife of over 2 decades with 2 children. A jury also held her fate in their hands on 2 charges, the primary being second-degree murder and the second one being criminal possession of a weapon. Her husband was a police officer at the NYPD who kept 2 guns in the home. According to Sheehan, her husband had always been controlling, but he later became violent. His physical abuse included kicking her, stepping on her, and in one instance pouring a pot of hot marinara sauce on her head because he didn't want to eat it that night for dinner. Alcohol was his partner in crime against Barbara, especially on vacation, which is why when he began planning a trip to Florida, Barbara declined to go. That's when he aimed one of his guns at her. She ran and managed to grab the second gun and shot him. But after still posing a threat to her, she shot him again. He died, and like Clenney, she was arrested and prepared for trial. After 3 days of deliberations, the jury acquitted Sheehan of second-degree murder. However, Sheehan was found guilty of the weapons charge and sentenced to 5 years in prison, which was appealed and affirmed. Every relationship has 2 stories. Every homicide has at least 3. The jury's job is not to decide who was perfect, but to determine whether the law justifies what happened next. As of right now, the judge has not ruled on the motion yet. The next hearing is scheduled for July 30th at 9 a.m. Do you think this is a solid defense, or is her defense team simply grasping at straws?